And now the Harper government takes a stand for Israel.
There are, after all, a lot more votes, a lot more, in being anti-Israeli than in taking a stand. But as long as I am Prime Minister, whether it is at the United Nations, the Francophonie, or anywhere else, Canada will take that stand, whatever the cost.
Prime Minister Stephen Harper has made one of his strongest statements yet in support of Israel during a speech at an international conference on anti-Semitism in Ottawa. The Prime Minister said his government will defend Israel, even if it means Canada must pay a price internationally. For a reaction to the comments, we go live to Ottawa and Hillel Neuer. He's the Executive Director of UN Watch and one of the guest speakers at the anti-Semitism conference. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Jeff.
Tell me, is Canada paying a price for its support of Israel, as the Prime Minister suggests, speaking, of the Security Council seat?
Well, experts differ on what the factors were behind Canada's inability to get elected. Some say it was lobbying by Brazil for Portugal. Others say the European Union played an important role, and still others talk about the landing rights dispute with the United Arab Emirates. So we don't really know what the cause was, but we can presume that the fact that Canada has taken a principled position on the Middle East and has supported democratic Israel over terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran, which supports those groups, may indeed have played a factor. And the question is, should Canada take the road of Libya, which was elected to the Security Council recently and now sits on the Human Rights Council? It was elected without a single vote in opposition. Or will Canada take a principled stand and not try to win favor from regimes that promote violation of democracy and human rights?
Participating in this conference, are you comfortable with the Prime Minister, though, suggesting that Canada's stance perhaps was a factor in that seat?
Well, I think it's, as I said, I think it clearly was a factor. There's no question that if you're Libya and Saudi Arabia and Syria, and the Security Council is going to take a vote on Middle East issues, you'd rather have some European Union country that tends to be wishy-washy on these issues. And I think, it's a time now where Canadians remember what happened in World War II, where some forces in the West wanted to appease Nazi Germany, and others said we have to take a stand. And I think when we're facing radical hatreds around the world, terrorism, people who would destroy airplanes, as we saw just recently with the sending of packages to synagogues that could have blown up airplanes around the world, I think it's a time when you have to take a moral and clear stand. And I think the Canadian government should be saluted and is respected worldwide by many pro-human rights and democracy activists for taking that principled stand.
And the conference is looking at not only anti-Semitism, but the new anti-Semitism. What is that?
Well, the Iranian leader, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, stood up in Geneva at the World Conference on Racism, and he said Zionists control the world and they have an evil plot to control the economies, capitalism, and to wage war around the world. And, if you look at his rhetoric, it's virtually identical to what the Nazis were saying in the 1930s, except instead of saying the word Jews, they used the word Zionists. And it's code. And so what we're finding in the past 10, 20 years, and it really started under Stalinist Soviet Union, was an attempt to use coded language to say we're anti-Zionist. In fact, in the 1960s, there was an attempt at the United Nations by the Soviet Union to condemn Zionism as racism in the 1960s. And Canada's John Humphrey, who was the founding director of the UN's Human Rights Center and was someone that I remember from McGill Law School, he said, that kind of language is anti-Semitism. So it's new and it's not so new. We're seeing coded use of language, Zionism, use of terms against Israel, which crosses the line from legitimate criticism into something that's very different.
Hillel Neuer, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for this morning.
My pleasure.